Welcome back to Pokemon episode summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 372, Training Rex. The episode begins with Ash and the gang still on their way to Maz Deep City, though their boat actually had taken them to a little pit stop that wasn't Maz Deep City, but instead, Muscle Island, which Brock read from his guidebook, had two small mountains that were shaped like an arm flexing its bicep, and it was essentially just a rocky outcrop. Ash and May then saw the mountains that were shaped like an arm flexing their bicep, and this answered their question as to why the fuck the island was named Muscle Island when all they saw was rocks rather than muscles. Brock also learned from his guidebook that the next ferry that would take them to Maz Deep City, because yeah, there's apparently another ferry that came to Muscle Island, would arrive very soon. The key, however, was absolutely being sure that Ash and the gang could get on this goddamn ferry, since this was going to be the last ferry that would come by Muscle Island for a while. Although Brock clarified that if they did manage to get on the ferry, then by tomorrow morning they should actually be in Maz Deep City. This excited Ash, seeing that he was very close to his 7th Hoenn Gym battle. I'm sure the audience was excited too. No filler. Anyways, since Brock knew that the ferry wouldn't be arriving for a while to take anyone to Maz Deep City, he suggested that they might as well kill some time by exploring Muscle Island, and Ash, May, and Max eagerly agreed, with May suggesting that they try and find a coffee shop, because she was really craving some goddamn coffee. Brock looked in his guidebook, and apparently there were no coffee shops on Muscle Island, but May refused to believe this, stating that they simply just hadn't found one yet, but when they still couldn't find one, obviously, she got very discouraged. Suddenly, though, Ash and the gang started to hear some people training. They were going, 1, 2, 1, 2, and Ash and the gang obviously questioned what the fuck was going on. Probably some more fucking bullshit. Meanwhile, Team Rocket were of course following Ash and the gang's boat to Muscle Island, but they ended up being pretty tired while they were pedaling, and therefore ended up crashing onto Muscle Island's beach in their Magikarp sub, with it damaged. So they all quickly abandoned the Magikarp sub and run far away from it on the other side of the beach, thinking that it was so damaged that it would explode, as they yelled in fear, ready for the explosion of a lifetime. So they took some cover behind some boulders as well. After a while, the Magikarp sub doesn't explode though, so Jesse questions Meowth why exactly Meowth suggested that they run the fuck away. Meowth tried to explain that the Magikarp sub should have exploded, but before he could answer, the sub was then swept away by a giant wave and sank down into the sea, being lost forever. Until they fixed it. And no, you're not supposed to know. Anyways, Team Rocket just stared in silence at this giant wave, stunned at what the fuck just happened, and they eventually get over their shock, enough to argue with each other as to whose fault it was that the Magikarp sub was now gone. Even though I'd wager it was probably Meowth's, but before they can all come to a conclusion, they then hear the same chanting that Ash and the gang heard earlier, the 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and they decide to investigate, just like Ash and the gang had. Ash and the gang happened to arrive at the source of the chanting first, and found out that the source was none other than some people in the midst of an intense workout with their Pokémon, with most of the people being weightlifters doing various exercises, while one man wearing sunglasses was doing arm exercises with a heavy-looking steel Pokeball. Other people were balancing on poles. Another guy was practicing his punching. Another guy was lifting up his electrode. Another guy was lifting up 3 Geodudes with one on each hand, and then an extra one that he would switch on and off as if they were dumbbells, and a woman was doing sit-ups while Blastoise spotted her. Those were just some of the exercises that were going on. Ash and the gang literally had to watch in amazement at all the shit that was going on, especially Brock, who was amazed that so many different physical activities could be going on at the same time. Just then, the leader of the exercising group and the instructor, Rocky, shouts encouragement to all of his friends, telling them that trainers also needed to stay fit and in shape in order to win battles, not just their Pokemon. Rocky then notices Ash and the gang and goes up to them and greets them, introducing himself as the person who leads the unofficial gym on Muscle Island. Yeah, that's right, it was a gym, it wasn't just an exercise gym. Rocky assumed that Ash and the gang must have come on the island to join his gym, but Ash and the gang denied this, explaining that they were only trying to kill some time while waiting for the boat to Maz Deep City. And Brock asked if they could kill some time by going to any nearby shops, and if there was any nearby shops he recommended, though Rocky simply replied that there were no shops, and also just nothing on the island at all, with the exception of the ferry, the port, and the gym. Since people on Muscle Island felt no need for a store, since they could just make do with what they already had. They didn't need to buy anything new. Before Brock can respond, Rocky changes the subject, asking about Ash's journey, if he was going to Maz Deep City, assuming that he must have been looking for a gym badge, though Ash and the gang cut Rocky off, explaining how they were extremely worried that they wouldn't be able to go to a shop, since they didn't have very many supplies left, including food, though Rocky promised to share some of him and his students' food to Ash and the gang, but in return, he wanted Ash to answer his question, if he really wanted to go to the Maz Deep gym, and also, he wanted to hear more stories from their travels, mostly about the battles with other trainers that they've had. Since he and his students love battling, being an unofficial gym and all, and Ash deducts that Rocky and his students likely wanted to know about his battles, so that not only could they be in top physical condition in terms of strength, but also top battle condition with their Pokemon. So Ash and the gang then introduce themselves, as Ash explains about a few of his gym battles that he's had in Hoenn, like the ones with Roxanne, Brawly, Watson, Flannery, Norman, and Winona, and upon hearing this, Rocky gave Ash some advice, which was also his gym's philosophy, which was that when trainers work on improving their own physical strength, it inspires their Pokemon to do the same, and thereby become stronger in battle. This philosophy functioned as advice, since it was essentially a form of Rocky inviting Ash and the gang to come to train at his gym for the time being, since a new boat wouldn't arrive until the afternoon. Trying to motivate the gang by reminding them that if they got into shape physically, then they could get their Pokemon in shape for any upcoming battles they may have. Brooke, Ash, and Max were eager to try some weight training, knowing that it could increase their Pokemon strength, and Max was just hoping that it would help him get a Pokemon in the first place. Although May, on the other hand, was not looking forward to doing exercises and decided to just sit out, as she questioned what the point of it was, saying to her it just seemed like a sweat session. Although Ash eventually convinced May to at least give exercising a try, when he said that it wouldn't hurt for May to at least try it out. Meanwhile, Team Rocket was spying on Ash and the gang from some nearby bushes. Upon seeing everyone training, not Ash and the gang just yet, but everyone else, Meowth got the idea that he, Jesse, and James should train as well, and basically join the gym for the time being, stating that if they got strong enough, then Giovanni would make them his official bodyguards. And Meowth had a vision of a paranoid Giovanni checking absolutely everywhere, under his bed, under a painting, under a lamp, for danger. But he would soon have to stop checking for danger when he goes into his regular work outfit and has to get work done. But he could barely work if he was still scared, so that's where Jesse, James, and Meowth came in, who were noticeably stronger and had bigger muscles. And that was because of the training they had done, and now they were officially Giovanni's bodyguards. Meowth started to cheer happily for his idea, but Jesse interrupted him. Jesse thought that getting stronger was a terrible idea, and she didn't sign up for Team Rocket to be a bodyguard, but after seeing Jesse and Meowth's verbal disagreement, James stated that he thought Meowth's idea was a great idea, because their own physical weakness was a big reason why they were losing to Ash and the gang all the time, and had yet to capture Pikachu, saying that once they were stronger physically, they wouldn't be getting blasted off all the time, and they could actually get Pikachu in their hands. Jesse and even Meowth were actually unimpressed by how fired up James was. They found him quite annoying. But just then, one of the men who was training in the gym spotted Team Rocket and introduced himself as Randy, and asked if Team Rocket wanted to join the training program with everyone else. Jesse and Meowth were extremely hesitant, about to decline the offer, obviously, but they couldn't before James eagerly accepted the offer, and he left with the trainer. So Jesse and Meowth, not wanting to be separated, immediately followed. Meanwhile, Max was starting his training, and he was trying to lift a small steel Pokeball off the ground, but he couldn't even get it a single inch off the ground. Max was a bit discouraged that he couldn't lift the steel Pokeball when he saw one of the trainers lifting it so easily earlier, and just then that trainer came up to him and encouraged Max, stating that the steel Pokeball weighed 30 pounds, which he knew was difficult for a beginner, but if Max could do this, he could definitely improve his Pokeball throwing skills, although Max still struggled. Meanwhile, as for May, who had actually been convinced to exercise, she was pedaling on an exercise bike that was shaped like a Pokeball, actually enjoying it, much to her surprise. The female Blastoise trainer from earlier was spotting her and informed her that if she continued to do this exercise bike, then she would become a better trainer, since a good trainer required plenty of mobility to keep track of the battle, since you always had to be running around to keep track of your Pokemon when they were battling. Meanwhile, as for Ash and Pikachu, Rocky had assigned them to the mechanized rope swing, with he and Brock spotting the two of them. Basically, the mechanized rope mechanism consisted of two ropes hanging from one horizontal wheel each, and it was attached to a generator via a pulley system. Ash and Pikachu started by both climbing up one of the ropes, and Rocky then turned on the machine part of the system using a control which sent Ash and Pikachu spinning as the wheels rotated. And the main idea of the exercise was for Ash and Pikachu to repeatedly change ropes even while the wheel was spinning, but this proved to be very difficult, way more difficult than they expected. Because when Ash and Pikachu tried to grab each other's ropes and switch off at the same time, they failed miserably, leading Rocky to point out that this exercise was to make a trainer and Pokemon in sync with each other, which Brock said was really good training, because Pokemon bonds were very important in battle. Basically, the reason why I related to Pokemon bonds was that the trainer and Pokemon had to be on equal footing of when they were going to grab each other's ropes, so that, they could each make it on the rope safely. Meanwhile, as for Team Rocket, they had started exercising, and all three of them, even Meowth and Jesse, were actually really enjoying running on treadmills. Although Ash and the gang soon spotted Team Rocket running on treadmills, and they were confused by this. And when Team Rocket saw Ash and the gang, they started to hesitate running, thinking that Ash and the gang may do something to them, and get even more nervous when Ash and the gang literally come up to them, with Rocky likely to confront Team Rocket or something, but Team Rocket decided to not raise any suspicions of themselves, and just continue on with their treadmill running, sticking to their original speed that they were on. Sure enough, Ash warns Rocky that Team Rocket were dangerous, but Rocky rebutted that they had to welcome anyone to train on the island, and also added that Team Rocket couldn't be that dangerous because they hadn't done anything bad yet, and they seemed to be content just working out. So, with that, Ash, Brock, Max, and May decided to leave Team Rocket be as they walked away, along with Rocky. Seeing that Team Rocket was having fun after all. With Ash and gang gone, Team Rocket started to talk to each other, with James stating he hoped to be promoted once he was stronger, Jessie hoping to become a movie or fashion star when she had a better figure, and Meowth was just hoping to have some fast food after they finished exercising, because now Meowth was starting to not enjoy the treadmill. He was getting very tired. Since Rocky didn't really get a straight answer last time, back with Ash and the gang and Rocky asked why Ash was going to Mos Deep anyways, asking if it was for the gym battle, and Ash confirmed this. So Rocky proposed a battle with Ash as a challenge for him before he actually fought in Mos Deep. Before Ash could respond, the trainer that Max was training with and the trainer that May was training with come up to Rocky, and they warn Ash that Rocky was indeed the strongest trainer on the entire goddamn island, but Ash wasn't intimidated by this at all. It only made him more excited for the fight. So he accepted the battle. So Rocky and Ash head to the battle place on the island, and May, Max, and Brock come to watch as usual, but Rocky stops them, saying that no fans of any of the trainers were allowed to watch, because the battles had to be one-on-one, so therefore there was essentially a rule that prohibited any viewers of the battle. Ash and Rocky were then gone for the battlefield, leaving May, Max, and Brock disappointed, but they decided that they might as well take the opportunity to just rest up from all the exercising they did earlier, although the trainer that trained with Max and the trainer that trained with May encouraged Brock, May, and Max to continue training, even though they didn't want to. So they kind of felt like they were forced to. Meanwhile, as for Meowth, Jesse, and James, Meowth had overheard that Ash and Rocky were going to battle, so suggested that Team Rocket take the chance to capture Pikachu once Pikachu was exhausted from the battle, but Jesse and James weren't paying attention to Meowth, just ignoring him, as they were in their own thoughts completely, focusing on keeping up the rhythm on the treadmill, and still thinking about how they wanted a promotion and they wanted to become more beautiful. Though Meowth cheered regardless. Meanwhile, back with Ash and Rocky, they had just went to the battlefield, which was an area with rocks, and Ash stood on one rock, and Rocky stood on the other rock. And it was time for the battle to begin, although Rocky announced the rules, stating that this battle would be a double battle if Ash agreed, and Ash did agree. So, Rocky sent out his Quagsire and Walrein, whereas Ash sent out Pikachu and Grovyle, believing that they would have the advantage since Quagsire and Walrein were part water types. So Ash had Pikachu fire a Thunderbolt at Walrein first, after an intense stare down, but Quagsire jumped in front of Walrein and took the attack for it, though Pikachu and Ash were still pleased, believing that they must have just taken out Quagsire instead, since it was a water type, but Quagsire emerged from the explosion that was caused by the Thunderbolt and the smoke that was caused by it completely unharmed, leaving Ash to remember that Quagsire was partially a ground type as well, so electricity wouldn't work on it. And Rocky taunts Ash because of this. Meanwhile, as for Max, May, and Brock, they were training their abs by doing sit-ups, as one Geodude spotted each of them respectively, so 3 Geodudes in total. And May, Max, and Brock could barely focus on their sit-ups since they were so depressed that they were not able to watch the battle between Ash and Rocky. Meanwhile, as for Team Rocket, even Jesse was starting to get tired while being on the treadmill, not just Meowth. And much to James and Meowth's dismay, the trainer that had spotted them in the bushes earlier had been watching them and told them that if they wanted to complete the set on the treadmill, they still had to go for another few hours before they could stop. Jesse and Meowth were obviously very annoyed by this, whereas James had not lost his enthusiasm for running on the treadmill at all. He was showing no fatigue, still fired up to keep going, which was even more to Jesse and Meowth's charging. Meanwhile, back at the battle, Walrein attacked using an Ice Ball, but Pikachu and Grovyle both dodged the move by using a Quick Attack. Pikachu then goes for an Iron Tail on Walrein, and Grovyle goes for a Leaf Blade on Quagsire, but both attacks fail when Quagsire and Walrein switch sides, so the Iron Tail didn't do much damage to Quagsire, and the Leaf Blade didn't do much damage to Walrein. And to make matters worse, Grovyle and Pikachu got startled by the switch and ended up bumping into each other, taking recoil damage as a result, leading Rocky to point out that Ash had to sync with his Pokemon if he wanted to win, and he has Walrein go for another Ice Ball. But Walrein had to charge up the Ice Ball first, so Pikachu took the opportunity to try and hit Walrein with a Thunderbolt once more, but Quagsire just jumped in front like before, negating the attack since Quagsire was a ground type. The Ice Ball then finished charging up, so the super large Ice Ball ended up hitting both Grovyle and Pikachu at the same time, hurting them both. Rocky was very disappointed with Ash's skills, since he expected more of a challenge from a trainer outside the island, and he stated that mainland trainers weren't much of a goddamn challenge for him. So Ash decided to prove him wrong, since he was technically a mainland trainer. He basically wanted to get Rocky thinking that mainland trainers were tough again, even though Rocky was starting to not believe this anymore. And in order to prove Rocky wrong, Ash knew that he had to see Rocky's strategy, and he managed to find out through analysis that Rocky's strategy had been to train Quagsire to be good at blocking moves, while Walrein served as the one who would attack. So Ash and Pikachu and Grovyle had to come up with a strategy to beat Walrein and Quagsire, as Walrein and Quagsire stared them down. Meanwhile, back with Max, May, and Brock, they were now doing push-ups, each having one of their Pokemon on their backs. Well, Max had May's Skitty, not his own Pokemon, but May had her Bulbasaur on her back, and Brock had his Lombre on his back, although they were tiring immensely, and started to complain that they were aching in every part of their body. Meanwhile, Team Rocket continued to run on the treadmill, though Jesse and Meowth were more walking at this point because they were so goddamn tired, but James was still at a fast jogging pace, as basically all of the weight lifting trainers on the island observed James, amazed by him. And James reminded Meowth and Jesse to continue running, since their muscles would definitely improve. Meowth and Jesse then come up with a plan to distract all of the weight trainers so that they could escape the treadmill without them noticing, and make up a lie that they could see a Wobbuffet getting inside a UFO. Although the weight trainers weren't distracted by this, because James looked up in the sky trying to spot this fake UFO as well, still continuing to run while he did so. So the trainers were still more hyperfixated on that, since they were more interested in James running as opposed to a UFO for some reason. James wasn't even fooled by the UFO trick at all, because he just shielded his eyes from the sun while looking and couldn't see anything, so he simply just got back to running at a very fast pace, leading Jesse and Meowth to almost fall over on their treadmill out of both tiredness and dismay. Back at the battle, Ash told Grovyle to use a Bullet Seed on both Quagsire and Walrein at the same time, but Walrein and Quagsire both take cover behind some rocks on the battlefield, and Rocky then orders Walrein to use another Ice Ball. So, Ash orders Grovyle and Pikachu to attack the Ice Ball with a Leaf Blade and Iron Tail respectively, but their attacks weren't quick enough to hit the Ice Ball, allowing the Ice Ball to hit Grovyle and Pikachu once again, leading Rocky to inform Ash that it would be impossible for him to fully get rid of the Ice Ball, since it got bigger every time. it was used. So if Leaf Blade and Thunderbolt couldn't, or Rhyhorn couldn't increase their sizes, then they would be useless against it, and warned Ash that the fourth Ice Ball was coming, leading Ash to go into thinking mode, trying to think of another strategy. Meanwhile, back at the training area, while Max, May, and Brock were training with Skitty, Lombre, and Bulbasaur on their backs, Max got an idea to get out of this training, which was to come up with a lie, as he tells all the trainers that he wanted to go get something he left back on the boat, and he needed May and Brock's help to get the item as well. All the trainers just offered to go to the boat and get it for Max, but May and Brock butt in and say that the item was really hard to describe, so it'd be easier if they just went and grabbed the item themselves. Initially, the trainers still assure Max that they could get the item for him, but after a bit more convincing, the trainers allow Max, May, and Brock to temporarily go back to their boat to get the item, although they had no intention of coming back to train, unbeknownst to the trainers. And as they walked to their boat, after recalling Skitty, Bulbasaur, and Lombre, they ended up walking past Team Rocket on the treadmill and gave them taunting looks, which pissed Jesse and Meowth off a little bit. Basically, May, Max, and Brock were like, "Hey, we got out of the training, you guys didn't, you suck." And this taunting made Jesse and Meowth so angry, they wanted to hop off the treadmill and go after Brock, Max, and May, but when they asked James to come with them, he refused because he was still training, so this pissed Meowth and Jesse off even more. And they tried to convince James to stop training, with Jesse stating to James that she had shit to do other than train, such as water a plant, and Meowth stated that they had to go check on the submarine to make sure it was all good. James, however, reminded Meowth that their submarine sank, and they didn't need it anymore, so this led Jesse and Meowth to begin trying to come up with, to stop trying to come up with excuses on why they should stop training, and Jesse yelled at James that exercise was over, they were fucking done, whether he liked it or not. Although Jesse and Meowth also realized that Brock, May, and Max were away from them now, so they yelled at James for letting May, Max, and Brock get away. Meanwhile, back during the battle, Ash had failed to come up with a new strategy, having no idea what to do, as Walrein charged up yet another Ice Ball. But Ash realized that the bigger the Ice Ball was going to be, the longer the Ice Ball took to charge up, so each successive Ice Ball took longer and longer to charge up. So this allowed Ash, right as Pikachu and Grovyle had luckily just managed to dodge this Ice Ball out of pure luck, to come up with an idea to actually counter the Ice Ball. So, right as Walrein started charging up another huge one, Ash told Pikachu to hit Walrein with a Thunderbolt, and just as Ash had expected, Quagsire jumped in front of Walrein to deflect the Thunderbolt and protect Walrein, but since Quagsire had to stay in one place to block Walrein and couldn't move, Ash took the opportunity to have Grovyle attack Quagsire with a Leaf Blade while Pikachu was still attacking with Thunderbolt, so Quagsire took massive damage from the Leaf Blade, falling over and being knocked out now, so now Walrein was just left. With Quagsire down, Pikachu ends the battle in a fancy way by jumping on Grovyle's head leaf and then jumping off of it when Grovyle threw Pikachu off towards Walrein. But while Pikachu was still in the air, not having landed yet, he released an aerial Thunderbolt, scoring a direct hit on Walrein, causing Walrein to faint as well. So with that, Rocky recalled his two Pokemon, thanking them for a good battle and putting up their best fight, and admitted that Ash and his Grovyle and Pikachu were the winners. Ash then recalls Grovyle, and Rocky congratulates Ash, Grovyle, and Pikachu on the win, and complimented Ash on his strategy of how Ash realized that Ice Ball needed more time to charge. Rocky was also impressed by the combination attack of Leaf Blade and Thunderbolt, and stated that he was going to strive to become an even better trainer than what he could become only on the island, and actually planned to go out on a journey to other places in the home region to battle stronger trainers. Although Rocky admitted that he may need to fine-tune that idea a little bit to make sure that the rest of the people he was training were okay with him going first. But admitted that regardless, he had learned a lot from Ash, and Ash thanked him, when suddenly Pikachu alerted Ash to the fact that Brock, Max, and May saw that the battle was over, and they were coming to talk to Ash and see how the battle went. So Ash told Max, May, and Brock that he had won the battle, making Max, May, and Brock very glad to hear that Ash had won. Although Rocky then reminded Ash and the gang of their ferry to Maz Deep City, pointing out that it had just arrived and was ready to take them there. So with that, Ash and the gang said goodbye to Rocky and all the other trainers, as Rocky smiled, stating that his loss to Ash was his greatest loss that he had ever experienced, and they went on the ferry bound for Maz Deep City, as evening had arrived by this point. With Ash telling Pikachu how excited he was for his 7th gym battle against Maz Deep City's gym leader, and he assured Pikachu that they were going to win no matter what, making Pikachu determined as well. Unbeknownst to Ash and the gang, though, Team Rocket had also snuck aboard the ferry and were disguised as sailors who were eavesdropping on Ash and the gang. Well, James was actually the one doing most of the eavesdropping and watching, because Jesse and Meowth were too busy complaining about their sore muscles. In fact, James suggested to Jesse and Meowth that now that they were stronger from their physical training, this was now their chance to steal Pikachu. They could actually do it by just trying to take Pikachu away. Although Jesse and Meowth were not really ready for this whatsoever, since they were so tired, but regardless, James basically forced them to come up to Ash and the gang with him. And the first thing they say is that they were inspecting all of the Pokemon on the ship and needed to take Pikachu for examination. Although Ash was skeptical about this, so he stopped them, leading Team Rocket to change their statement, saying that trainers were actually not allowed to have any Pokemon aboard the ferry, and they were going to take Pikachu for safekeeping. And James didn't wait for permission this time, going to grab Pikachu, but Ash was even more skeptical now. Stops James from grabbing Pikachu by pulling back James's arm as Pikachu cries out. Ash claimed that he wasn't going to let just anyone take Pikachu and demanded to know who they were first, leading Team Rocket to start doing their motto. Very excited because they hadn't had the chance to do their motto earlier in the day, although Meowth tried to stop them from doing the motto since they were blowing their cover and reminded Jesse and James that they were in their disguises. Although Jesse and James retorted that there was really no point in them keeping the disguises on now if they were just about to steal Pikachu anyways, and Meowth agreed, so Jesse and James simply just threw off their disguises and continued the motto with Chimecho and Wobbuffet joining in. James then brags about how much more strength Team Rocket had now thanks to their training, and Jesse pulled out a net and used it to grab Pikachu inside, and tried to pull Pikachu to them, but Ash grabbed the net as well, and it turned out into an all-out tug-of-war between the two sides, with James and Meowth helping out Jesse pull to their side, and Max, May, and Brock pull with Ash on their side. And all of this was much to Pikachu's discomfort, as, it was pretty painful to get pulled around and all that. And since Pikachu was so uncomfortable, it let out a thunderbolt of pure stress. And since Team Rocket and Ash and Gang were both desperately trying to grab Pikachu, they were both affected by the thunderbolt, with Team Rocket being blasted off, and Ash and the gang and Pikachu, who was now free from the net, were sent blasting off as well. And they ended up landing in the water, going in a direction opposite of the ferry, as the ferry continued on, with the driver not knowing that Ash and the gang had went overboard. Damn, I guess we're not making it to Maz Deep City, huh? Will Ash and the gang drown? Find out next time on Pokemon Ball Z.